Hello and welcome to the explanation from the BBC World Service. This is where we press pause on the busy 24-hour news cycle and dig a bit deeper behind the headlines.
Today the West Bank's nightmare started coming true.
Protesters were throwing bricks in there, using bamboo poles to smash vehicles.
It's a city where mothers carry guns, along with their groceries.
The spaces that people can run to for safety are shrinking every day here.
I'm Claire Graham, and with the help of my BBC colleagues around the world, I'll be trying to get a better understanding of the stories that matter to all of us. Today, North Korea, how its foundation in post-war geopolitics has led to its position as one of the world's most secretive countries.
Unconventional? Maybe. Unpredictable? Definitely. But a meeting arranged via presidential Twitter has just ensured these two men a place in history. Donald Trump didn't just take one step into hostile territory, he took 20. Before returning south over the official military line which separates the two Koreas.
President Trump has just walked across the demarcation line that made him the first US president to visit our country.
On the 30th of June 2019, something unthinkable happened. An American president set foot in North Korea and shook hands with the country's supreme leader, Kim Jong-un. Now, Laura Bicker has been the BBC's correspondent in South Korea since 2017, and she was there to witness history in the making. What are your memories of that moment?
Donald Trump had sent a tweet, as he often did as president, and we wondered if Kim Jong-un would pick up the invitation. Now, I have to say, it was a bit unprofessional, but all of us were sitting there going, making bets, going, is this going to happen? Is this going to happen? And I had said to my team, this will happen because Donald Trump wants this made-for-TV moment. And he knew that just by taking those few steps, he would make history. And that area has special significance, that demarcation line that separates North and South Korea. And actually, if anyone can remember the pictures at the time, these blue huts sit at the very point where North and South Korea are separated. And it's where the armistice was signed in 1953. And all of those huts are separated between North and South Korea. So when you even go into one of these huts, the table has a line through it.
Following Japan's defeat in the Second World War, the United States and the Soviet Union divided the Korean peninsula along the 38th parallel. In 1948, the pro-US Republic of Korea was established in Seoul. In the northern industrial centre of Pyongyang, the Soviets installed communist guerrilla leader Kim Il-sung as the first premier of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea.
He quickly solidified his control. He created a cult of personality. And all of a sudden he became the heavenly leader, the great chairman. And then in 1950, most evidence suggests that he made a decision, not the Soviet Union, not the Chinese, he made a decision to invade South Korea, which was eventually backed by the Soviet Union. And on the 25th of June 1950, he claimed he was responding to a South Korean assault on his land. He launched his forces into South Korea.
That attack came without provocation and without warning.
President Truman gave a national address.
It was an act of raw aggression without a shadow of justification. The communist invasion was launched in great force with planes, tanks, and artillery.
They quickly captured the capital, Seoul. They forced the leader of South Korea and the government to flee. And by mid-July, remember this is just a month and a half later, North Korean troops had mostly overwhelmed the South Korean and allied American units. And that is where the Korean War began. And it took 3 years of this intensive fighting for both North and South Korea to come to an agreement. And it was called the Korean Armistice Agreement. That was eventually signed, where I mentioned before, at Panmunjom on 27th of July 1953. There is no peace treaty between North and South Korea. The two sides are officially still at war.
According to the North's official and only literature, Kim Il-sung is the great leader of revolution, peerless patriot and national hero. The legend is the great leader rode into the capital, Pyongyang, in 1945 on a Russian tank. Today, he's the world's longest ruling president, sole architect of a mighty socialist state built out of the fanatic discipline of 20 million North Koreans.
Around 80% of North Korea was completely destroyed in the war.
Wow.
The Allied bombing raids really took out quite a lot of the country. But when Kim Il-sung took control, he decided to rebuild. And he started reconstructing the country with extensive Chinese and Soviet help. He basically took all the land into state control. They totally underestimated the crop damage that happened in the country. And there was a huge famine between 1954 and 1955 where, thousands of people are thought to have died. But he kept on building with a number of plans. And the kind of plan he used is a concept which you may have heard of called juche.
In the Palace of the People's Studies, 31 volumes of the thoughts of Kim Il-sung explain the faith. Study of them is a compulsory part of Korean education. Juche and Kim Il-sungism insists that, for all its Soviet sponsorship, North Korea should make its own destiny. The policy is of deliberate and almost mystical self-isolation. Foreigners see little and are told less about North Korea.
And that has continued with his son and with his grandson.
Kim Il-sung died in 1994 and was succeeded by his son Kim Jong-il. As the dear leader of North Korea, Kim strengthened the country's nuclear capabilities while presiding over a famine that devastated the country. Following his death in December 2011, the dynasty continued when his third son, Kim Jong-un, became the supreme leader of North Korea.
It sounds like a religious service, and perhaps it is. North Korean ideology says that the dead leader, Kim Jong-il's birth was supernatural, while the founder of the dynasty, Kim Il-sung, is officially immortal. This was the moment when Kim Jong-un, the new leader, gets the public allegiance of the military hierarchy, each of them more than double his age. But the true moment of coronation comes when the ceremonial head of state, Kim Yong-nam, gives him his new official title. Supreme leader of the party, the military, and the people.
Kim Jong-un is carefully controlling all the information in and out. Anyone caught with a phone could be severely punished. And even when you get pictures out from North Korea, it appears that life there has stopped in time. Electricity is still outside of the main capital of Pyongyang. It's difficult to come by. If they want to watch, for instance, anything other than state television, they are risking their lives, especially if they watch South Korean dramas, which they're very fond of doing, and get smuggled in via, especially these days, USB sticks. The biggest threat to North Korea is outside influence, because if the people of North Korea get to find out what life is like outside, then they know that their government is lying to them.
And yet there are North Koreans who do try and leave and have left, and you've spoken to defectors who've made the journey out from North Korea. Can you think of any stories that for you really stood out, for any sort of the journeys that they had to make?
They cross many times the Yalu River, which is the river between China and North Korea. These days, obviously, it's impossible because it's a shoot-to-kill policy at the border. I mean, when you think about that moment where you're standing by a freezing river, saying goodbye perhaps for the last time to your mother, but knowing you're putting not just your own hands, but your family's life savings into the hands of a broker who says he can get you over that river, who says he's bribed a guard with a gun who will shoot you if you're seen.
When I was a child, my parents passed away. So my younger sister and my elder brother left home, and I was left to sell sweets on the street around railway stations. It was so hard to live. It was freezing cold. I was sleeping rough, and a woman approached me when I was selling sweets and said, "Life is better in China. If I go to China, I won't suffer like this. I won't starve to death."
One young man told me, he made it to South Korean embassy and he thought, wow, I've made it. And then he gets on a plane. Now, he's never seen a plane, let alone gotten one. And then, of course, they get food on the plane. He's like, God, they're giving me food. It was a Korean Airlines flight, so they gave him bibimbap, which is a Korean rice dish. And he says it was the best. It was the bibimbap of freedom. It's my meal of freedom. Now, occasionally North Korea allow, through the Red Cross, a chosen few to visit their relatives in North Korea, and it's very carefully choreographed.
As she prepared to head north, 92-year-old Lee Gum-sum couldn't stop thinking about what she would do when she saw her son. He was only 4 years old when they were separated. Mrs. Lee was one of thousands caught in the chaos as refugees tried to head south at the end of the war in 1953. She lost sight of her husband and son as she was put on a boat. Within days, the border was closed. She was trapped in the south, her family in the north.
As a correspondent, I've seen many things over my 20 years, but when we tried to edit those pictures and interview those people, I found myself just uncontrollably crying because they rush in and hug their relatives and hold them tight, and they get these 24 hours to hold their hand and tell their lifetime stories. And then they call it the second separation because all of a sudden they're taken away again and they never get to see one another again.
When the moment came, it took only one glance for her to break into a run. For now, all thoughts are on these first precious hours together, even though they both know they're also likely to be their last.
Well, let's talk about Kim Jong-un then. He became Supreme Leader of North Korea in 2011. And since then, we have seen nuclear ambitions growing under his leadership. Is that fair to say?
How North Korea views their nuclear programme, it's a treasured sword. They believe that it's very, very important to keep up their weapons ambitions. And, to start with, Kim Jong-un, there was a few tests, but back in 2017, he made more advances than his grandfather or his father. He did more nuclear tests than ever before, and of course was sending long-range weapons, which he claims, and certainly some analysts do believe, were capable of reaching the United States.
A far-off American outpost in the tropical waters of the Western Pacific now finds itself at the centre of a dangerous standoff. This is Guam, the site this summer of US military exercises, American territory that North Korea says could now be in the firing line. On North Korean state TV came this chilling headline that Guam could be targeted by medium to long-range rockets. And it came just hours after President Trump threatened Pyongyang with some of the most incendiary rhetoric used by a US president in decades. The words improvised, the tone agreed upon beforehand with aides.
North Korea best not make any more threats to the United States. They will be met with fire and fury like the world has never seen.
There were heightened fears of what might come. And then all of a sudden, in January 2018, Kim Jong-un announced that he was willing to take part in the Winter Olympic Games. And I was in the car with my team at the time when they announced that Kim Jong-un's sister, Kim Yo-jong, was coming to the opening ceremony. And the scream that came from my Korean producer, Won Jong-bae, she just let out this augmented scream. She went, "Oh, you've no idea how big this is." And we had to pull over the car while everybody got excited. And I was like, oh my goodness, Kim Jong-un's sister is coming. As a reporter, as a correspondent, you get to have these front seat to historic moments. And that moment at the Pyeongchang Winter Olympics, when they came out as one unified Korea and they were waving that kind of blue flag which shows the whole Korean peninsula together, it felt like a real moment of hope.
A great example of this unifying power is the joint march here tonight of the two teams from the National Olympic Committees of the Republic of Korea and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We thank you.
Little did we know that just a few months later, we were going to see Kim Jong-un meet President Moon of South Korea and then meet Donald Trump. At the time, each little moment felt huge.
Let's take a minute just to focus on that strange relationship between Kim Jong-un and President Trump. We saw a lot of this play out on Twitter, which became a go-to for the president for communicating with the world. Have a listen to this, Laura.
9 months ago, Donald Trump was calling him Little Rocket Man, and Little Rocket Man was calling him a mentally deranged dotard. Now they're walking together and sharing a laugh.
I feel really great. We're going to have a great discussion, and I think tremendous success. They'll be tremendously successful. We will have a terrific relationship, I have no doubt.
I've actually been at all 3 summits between Donald Trump and Kim Jong-un. The first handshake in Singapore, where they both walked towards one another in that very fancy hotel, and it brought hope to the entire Korean peninsula. And then in 2019 in Hanoi, things were a bit more tense. The two tried to reach a deal and they both ended up walking away. But watching the first sitting US president shake Kim Jong-un's hand and then walk together into North Korea and back, all of us were just, right, this could change things. Are things going to turn around for the Korean peninsula? And here we are years later. It hasn't just fizzled away, the relationship between the United States and North Korea. It's gone out with a bang. North Korea has returned to quite an intense period of testing its weapons, and nothing has changed.
What do you think's going to happen with North Korea? Is it going to remain a strange and secretive place? Is it going to engage in talks again like we saw with President Donald Trump? Where do you see it going next, Laura?
Kim Jong-un has proved to be unpredictable, so I wouldn't rule anything in and I wouldn't rule anything out. Right now, it looks extremely unlikely that they will risk venturing from their borders or even opening the borders. Not only is the country closed off, the people are closed off, and I worry what's happening to the people of North Korea. And we talk a lot about the leaders. The world focuses a lot on denuclearization and Kim Jong-un's weapon program, but there are 25 million people there who are living very difficult lives. I hope they get what they need, food, shelter, and what they deserve.
You've been listening to The Explanation on the BBC World Service with me, Claire Graham, and my guest today, the BBC Seoul correspondent, Laura Bicker. And if you want to hear more episodes of The Explanation, please subscribe now on BBC Sounds.